Welcome back to Explain. I'm Sonam, and we are in this podcast where we break down the latest in AI, innovation, and the future of technology. Today, I'm joined by Monifa Porter from Mark 49, a company that helps enterprises incubate and scale startups. Monifa, when I spoke to her about and she told me about her experience, she has a wealth of experience bridging the gap between startup agility and corporate structure, and she has seen firsthand how AI is reshaping the way businesses innovate. We will be diving into some big questions today: how enterprises can successfully build disruptive ventures, the challenges of scaling innovation, and how do we keep or how to keep the human element at the center of AI driven transformations. Whether you're a founder, developer, or just an AI enthusiast, there's something in this conversation for everyone. Now, before we dive into AI and startups, let's start with something light. Now, Monifa, if you could instantly master any skill outside of work, what would it be and why?
Wow. I would I would know how to play every instrument in my home and know
Wow,
how to play it well. I've played the things I played like a fourth grader, and I'd love to play like a maestro. So I have a piano, an acoustic bass, an electric bass, and a ukulele and an electric bass ukulele, and I'd love to be able to play all of them with prowess.
that's pretty damn cool. Wow. And actually, I'm surprised to hear like so many instruments in one household. Wow, that's pretty good.
I just keep switching because I'm like, well, this one's hard. Let me try a different one.
Nice, nice. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I tried playing instruments once in my life, and I decided that I'll stick to just dancing and not try music instruments. It takes a lot of patience. That was pretty cool. Thanks for sharing that. All right then, let's get started. Now, as I said, in the introduction that I gave, I mentioned that we'll talk about bridging startups and enterprises. And from the first time when we spoke, you told me a little bit about Mark 49. And when I read it, so it focuses on helping enterprises incubate and scale startups, like I said earlier. Now, what do you think are the biggest challenges that you've seen in bridging this startup mindset and the corporate structures? And how do you navigate them?
Sure. I mean, if you think about it, every large global corporation in the world should be beating pretty much any startup at anything
Yeah.
because these corporations, they have technology, they have channels, they have products and services and offerings, they have customers, they
Mhm.
have all this stuff that could be brought to bear on bringing a new product or service to market. But oftentimes, the inertia, the mothership antibodies, if you will, can get in the way. So the
Mhm.
orthodoxies and the antibodies that creates slow decision-making processes and a risk-averse culture. Those things can get in the way, and sometimes just the sheer size of an organization and the communication challenges and how long does it take to get procurement to approve a new vendor and those kinds of things can get in the way of moving fast and people get sort of locked into their individual jobs, which can be fairly narrow.
Mhm.
And I think the opposite of that is true in startup land, where you've got one, two, three people, and you've got to wear a thousand hats, and you have no choice but to use your resources to do the most important thing and the most important thing only, which might be testing a product, driving revenue, proving product market fit.
Mhm.
So in bridging the gap between
Yeah.
those two worlds,
Yeah.
that's sort of where Mach 49 sits. And we bring a teachable, repeatable, scalable methodology to help corporations staff a full-time team that's focused on innovation. Innovation is a full-time job. And then we run them through our method, which is really about structured empathy. It's about helping the new venture team learn to listen very carefully to their customers and ask a series of questions, running a series of tests, which is all about validating and invalidating what you know and what you don't know,
Mhm.
and then taking that forward.
Fair point. You mentioned like some of the challenges and something that I'm not new to them. Like I'm aware of these challenges that I hear being in the Bay Area. So do you think like among learning how to use whatever resources are available and product market fit and many others that you mentioned, which one of these challenges do you think like the startups have the most, I don't know, friction with, or for like have a hard time understanding? Is it
Uh,
product market fit or something else?
I think a lot of startups are started with the sort of if you build it, they will come
Mm,
mindset, rather than going out to potential customers, potential stakeholders, the buyers, the users, the influencers that are in the space that you're trying to create in, rather than starting with those customers and
mhm,
asking them, what are your highest priority pains, and doing it in a sort of structured way, and learning from those pains and then testing value propositions and solutions. A lot of founders just start building, and they're investing their time and their talent and their focus in building a solution that they don't have any evidence anybody wants.
mhm.
And I think that's what gets in the way of a lot of startups.
Ah, okay. That makes a lot of sense. And now, when it comes to the role of AI, and I feel like pretty much every other company is using AI now, and it's reshaping industries. So, with that in mind, how do you see large enterprises leveraging AI to build disruptive ventures? Are there any trends that you see and find particularly exciting?
Yeah. So let me just sort of back up and
Hmm.
say, I think AI is like electricity.
Hmm.
People ask me all the time, what use case can I use AI for? Why do I need AI? And I think that's kind of the wrong mindset.
Hmm.
The mindset with which to use AI is use it for everything. Use it all day long for everything, and know when to sort of judiciously say, like, oh, I've reached what Ethan Mollick calls the jagged frontier. I've reached the edge of what AI is capable of, and I need to back away from that and not use AI for this thing.
Mm.
But just like with electricity, the use cases are innumerable.
Yeah.
And when you start applying electricity to things, you come up with entirely new ways of
Mm.
solving a problem. Like it was something like when you look back at the electrification of industry, it was something like 30 or 40 years before people stopped building factories the old way with some, like a steam engine in the middle, and hubs going out to various machines. They learned eventually after decades that they could use electricity to put power at different parts of the factory and create assembly lines, and really change the way that work is done and creating enormous efficiencies. We're so early days right
Mhm.
now with AI that most people sort of look at it and go, oh, well, how do I insert AI into my existing workflow?
Right.
And that's wrong. Like
Yes.
you,
Yes.
you have to take a step back and ask, what can AI do? What
Yeah.
are the outcomes that I'm trying to achieve? What is the fastest way for me to achieve that outcome? And it could be doing something like creating agentic layers
Mm.
that allow you to you know game and operate at a scale that you haven't really operated at. I'll
Mhm.
give you an example. We use something called synthetic personas at Mach 49.
Mm.
So a good part of our method is really understanding it's called open-ended discovery. We're trying to understand who matters most, what matters most to them, who are the buyers and users and influencers in an ecosystem of potential customers, and what are their highest priority pains. What are they going to pay to have solved,
Mhm.
right? So to figure that out, before we started using synthetic personas, we would run hundreds of user interviews,
Mm.
get a prospective buyer on the phone for a 45-minute conversation. We have a hypothesis about what the pains are. We run a script
Mhm.
to learn about those pains. We're listening for qualitative feedback, vocal inflections and things like that to understand those pains. It takes a lot of work to
Mhm.
find somebody and get them on the phone and run that interview.
I bet.
So one of the sort of key insights that we had with Gen AI was like, oh, we can actually prompt an LLM with some very careful prompting.
Mhm.
We can create synthetic personas. Ask those synthetic personas our sort of our script, but do it in a way that strips out the biases. So I don't just mean like the biases that are embedded in the LLM because it's only got the data it's got, but the biases of positivity, right? So like you just ask an LLM, hey, what do you think of this idea that I have? That's a great idea, Sonam.
Mhm.
That's a wonderful idea. And here's all the ways that it's wonderful. This is
Mhm.
the positivity bias. You see something similar in humans. So we ask we say you are a behavioral economist and you've interviewed 20 people who fit this profile. Here are the questions that you've asked. What patterns of pain emerged across those interviews. And it's just a way to sort of strip out some of those biases. So anywho, we use synthetic personas to understand the hypothesized pains so that when we finally do get those humans on the phone, we've got a very tight script and we're very clear on what some of those hypothesized pains are. And it basically allows you to find your focus with humans faster.
Mhm.
And then you're also probably exploring a slightly larger idea space, because the 4 or 5 people on your new venture team might hypothesize a list of pains that's this long, and your LLM can add to the list, right? So that's just one idea of how people use AI to fundamentally rethink the workflow. You're still
Mhm.
driving to the same outcomes, but you're not at all following the same method. And I think that's true for any kind of work stream where you can prepare an expert with an outcome and you're
Mhm.
saying, not how do you do what you do, but what are you trying to do?
Exactly. Yeah. And does it make sense to put Gen AI or AI in it?
Right,
Not just going with the hype and just putting it
right.
right there for the name.
Yeah, right, totally. And AI isn't good for everything, but
Yeah.
it's good for a lot of things, and it's good for more things, I think, than people assume.
Yeah.
But you're right. You shouldn't slap AI on everything, and you certainly shouldn't rebrand your own product or company as an AI company just
Exactly.
for the sake of hype.
For sure. That actually, so this conversation or topic actually gives me a good segue for my next question is around lessons from scaling startups. And what are some of those key lessons or common pitfalls companies should avoid when scaling innovative ideas?
Well, we talked about one of them, which is
Mhm.
be customer
Right.
centric.
Right.
Really, like, always, we have this saying around here: customer insights are the currency, and everything else is uninformed opinion. You really have to leverage your customer insights in order to get that product market fit that you're looking for in the most efficient way possible.
Mhm.
And in really, like, leaning on customer pain and cycles of validation to ensure that you're working at a way that makes sense. Another one, making small bets.
Yeah.
So, if you've got an idea, that's great. Test it in a small way,
Mhm.
and take the most amount of capital off the table. Sorry, take the most amount of risk off the table with the least amount of capital,
Mhm.
so that you can live to fight another day, right?
Mhm.
If you invest everything in your one big idea and it doesn't work,
Mhm.
then you're out of business. But if you can create a series of tests
Mhm.
that prove that you've got something, then you can work in a way that makes some sense.
Right. Right. That makes a lot of sense. And okay, so we talked about, you know, AI being used in many places. People are big companies, everyone pretty much is trying to adopt AI. So now, as AI adoption grows, how do you balance the need for technological advancement with the human side of innovation, whether it's to ensure creativity, inclusivity, and meaningful impact? And I ask this question because I get asked a lot that what is that human in the loop thing,
Mhm.
and if it
Yep.
matters or should we completely, give up? So what are your thoughts on that?
This question reminds me of conversations that I've had. Sometimes I give talks at business schools or at other university settings, and young people are often asking about the future of employment and the future of AI and
Mhm.
what's in it for me.
Mhm.
And I think the era we're entering into is it's the age of the generalist. It's a time when the human in the loop
Mhm.
can be an orchestrator of a field of agents that can go out and sort of deliver against your vision. They can explore your curiosities. They can create, across a series of workflows, an entire business that you're imagining. But if you're not imagining the business, what are they going to create, right?
Mhm.
So I think the if you sort of look at the CEO, the product manager, these cross-functional roles, I think that the humans in the loop are going to be the ones who get really good at this are going to be the generalists who can look across
Mhm.
functions and understand how sort of pieces fit together and then go after a particular vision. And I think that It's a really exciting time because you can see a problem that's local to you, that's local to your community, that's local to your neighborhood, and then go and solve it with an army of agents that you may not have been able to do that 5 years ago. You might have just been like, oh, well, this problem exists, but I don't have the capital, or I don't have the time, or I don't have the expertise to go after it. But now that's not the case.
Mm-hmm. Generalist. That's quite an interesting perspective. Like I mean, I haven't thought about from this side, but it makes a lot of sense that yeah, gotta be a generalist to work across different domains or departments. Makes sense. Now, I would love to get the advice, especially for those people who are in AI development, they're AI enthusiasts and who are trying to turn their ideas into successful ventures. What advice would you give them based on your experience at Mark 49 or just in general?
At the risk of repeating myself, um, I would say your sweet spot is at the intersection of customer pain and
Yeah.
the art of the possible. So understand what pains are out there to be solved.
Hmm.
Go and test with your customers to understand those pains. Test your value prop. Make a prototype. Test your solution. But in order to really win, you have to understand the art of the possible. So, what can I do with AI today that I couldn't do last week? What can I do with my team? Like, if I've got 2 or 3 people working with me, that it would take 30 people to do a week
Hmm.
ago, right? Or a year ago or whatever. And really understand how to use these tools and how to sort of orchestrate across a suite of tools so that you're really optimizing for your own vision and creativity, and you're not wasting time on things that you're not an expert at. If you don't know how to code, get your AI to code, but then you've got to also figure out how to get your AI to do QA and get your AI to,
Hmm.
to do all the
Yeah.
other things. So it's not simple, but you
Yeah.
can certainly do more now
Hmm.
with a small team than you could.
I bet. I like how you phrased it, the art of possible. That's really nice way to put it. But yeah, thank you so much. This was a very cool conversation, and that's a wrap for today's episode of Explained. Monifa, thank you so much for sharing your insights and experiences. And
Sonam, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
yeah, likewise. And to all our listeners, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to subscribe for more discussions on AI, innovation, and the future of tech. See you next time.
Bye.
Thanks.